All right, what's going on, everybody? Jon Forster here with Breakdown at the Barn, like always, with my main man, Erik Wnuck. How's it going, Erik?
Going good.
Nice. So, big news come out after this big deal we signed with Spotify. We had to come up with a new name. We went with Breakdown at the Barn. I think people are going to like it. What are your thoughts on that name, Erik? Maybe give a little bit of background to that.
Well, for you young fans of ours, all three of you, you might get used to the fact that Rutgers wrestles at the rack and you feel like that's always the way it's been. But if you go back into Forster in my day, we used to wrestle in the College Ave gym and practice in what was known as the dungeon, which was led by the Silver Fox. And the rack, as you guys know, is basically, the new name, but the barn, that's where we wrestled. That was the College Ave gym. All 30 fans that we have showed up, and we figured we'd go with that. So hence the barn.
Yeah, and most people think we just were born being the two biggest brains in wrestling, but a lot of knowledge was down there at the barn from the meat grinder, Mike Lita, Steve Cassidy, Darren Shulman, and the Silver Fox, John Sachi. We spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears down there, so I think it's an appropriate name. We got that barn rocking a few times. I remember taking out Ryder my senior year when Ryder was always a top ranked power. We took them out. That was a good time. So we did have our moments there. Nothing compared to the rack. Love that they're at the rack now. But let's get into it.
Yeah,
so I think first we're going to go over some questions, right?
Yeah, I'm not a big Ryder guy, but I got to give props to the big win over Lehigh. Nice job, Jersey.
Yeah, they did good. Big win by Ethan Liard over top All-American Jordan Wood. Took him out up to heavyweight. We'll probably get into that a little bit later when we go through the breakdown of the weights. But, I always, whatever, we had a rivalry. I root for Ryder, see them do good. Princeton do good. Jersey wrestling doing good is good for me in my book.
Yep. So why don't you walk through what the other options were for the name of the podcast?
Yeah, that's right. We had some good ones. Some submissions came in. I think one was the Wnuck Show, Forster and Wnuck combined. That was brought to you by Chris Tonzola and Jason Klein. I like that name, honestly. I thought it was a good combo. My issue was, people are going to be listening to this in the car with the kids. They might hear that word, think it's a different word, leave out the end. I wanted to make sure this was a wholesome podcast for the kids.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So Rodney Van Ness, I thought, had a good name. Had a little rhyming action going. So why don't you go through that one?
Yeah, what was that one? That one was Let's Get It On with Erik and John. That's a good one. Or John, we'd have to go with. That was a good one, but I think Big John McCarthy might have a little issues with copyrights there. That was his motto. Let's get it on. Kind of a good name, but I do think that we made the right decision. The breakdown of the barn.
Yep. So that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. So be sure to follow Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. Get on there. So we got a couple questions in, Erik. Why don't you read them off? We'll go through them. Some questions from our fans.
Yeah, well, we got a good one from Coach Pollard, and the question was, and I'm sure we'll get the picture on the screen, and was Donnie over the line in the last home match?
Yeah, so I think Pat Pollard sent that one in. And I looked at the tape. He was over the line. I don't know. Maybe Goodale needs to watch out there. I think that could be a team point. You're allowed to be closer during the duels. The duels during the tournaments, you get the corner duels. You have the half side. I looked at the tape. I drilled in. He was over the line. But let me tell you something. Goodale didn't go after Donnie. Brought him over here to New Jersey for his demeanor. He needed some intensity. He needed somebody out there to light a fire. And that's what Donnie does. Donnie's going to be out there. He's going to be in your face. If he gives them a team point, I'm good with that. I think he's a brawler. They need that fire. They need the people to get excited. And that's what Donnie brings to the table.
Yes, good correction. It was Pat Pollard. You're correct. So the second one is, and this is actually a good one. How much does not having fans hurt this team, especially with all the Big Ten opponents? Which wrestlers do you think it affects the most? Why don't you feel that?
Yeah, so you look at, the two matches we had at the rack, Minnesota and Purdue, they were very close matches, a lot of close matches in there. Really we just needed one thing to go either way. So I think it does hurt us. We definitely get that momentum going at the rack. Tim Burklow goes crazy, gets on the refs. You saw that call against Mike Van Brill. We're not going to harp on it. We talked about it last time, but I think those refs are thinking a little bit more harder before making that call coming out. If they have, 6,000 fans that are going to boo them out the stadium, I think they're going to think a little harder. So I think someone like Mike Van Brill in those close matches, maybe a Billy Danzer, they need, they're in those close matches a lot. The littlest things could push them over the edge. So I definitely think there are two people that are affected.
Yeah, well, I think the obvious one is Seabass. Okay, and as you see in the intro, you remember Seabass last year at the Big Tens just calling out Jersey. One of the big reasons he came over to Rutgers was simply having the opportunity to wrestle in front of, as he said, 5,000-6,000 fans in Jersey. Okay, he's a Jersey guy. This is what he wanted. This being a throwaway year, we get to see Seabass for 2 years as opposed to one. So I know he's itching to see the fans back at the rack, to see us down there, the crazy guys on the sidelines. But I'd say he's the big one that's probably the most affected by this, because he wanted that. So he'll get it next year, hopefully. But I'd say he's the biggest. He's probably affected the most.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's an entertainer. I mean, so far this year, he didn't really need it. He's getting the job done. I think in a close match, you look at the guys, we'll get into this at 141. There's some killers there. Nick Lee, Nick Lee, Chad Red. There's some really top guys there that I think he really feeds off the crowd. I think that brings him to the next level. So I definitely feel that growing with Seabass. And I can't wait to be at the rack, going crazy for him next year.
So why don't we do this, John? Why don't we jump into the rankings and go through NCAA weights? So obviously we usually do the breakdown of the Rutgers matches, but with this being the crazy year as it is, I'm sure I've heard by now, due to some COVID outbreaks, obviously Rutgers isn't wrestling this weekend. They didn't wrestle last weekend. Other programs like Iowa's been hit hard. So for that, we figure, you know what, let's just take a shot at the dark, go through some of the rankings, see where we're at kind of going into February. And John, before we go through them, I think this is a really hard year to do it, simply because for me, you go into February, you've already seen Midlands, you've seen the Southern Scuffle, you've had some of the Big Ten duels already take place, okay? You've seen some of the early wrestling in November where guys are getting a little bit of the cobwebs out. So twofold. One, I'll be frank, I'm going to be kind of winging it here, because there's a lot of guys I haven't seen wrestle in almost 18 months, okay? Some guys coming off redshirt I didn't see really much last year. Some of the younger freshmen who I've been excited about. I mentioned the kid at Purdue, who I think who's got a hell of a future, but I just haven't seen a lot of these guys wrestle. So I'm coming in from that standpoint. Number two, there's guys who just haven't gotten a lot of matches, and you really don't know where they're at, and are they going to be peaking at the right time? So I think of a Sammy Alvarez, okay? The Bull, I've seen his last two matches. Obviously, he's performed. He got the victories. He, for the most part, handled those matches well. But he didn't really look, he didn't seem like he was real fresh yet, and that he was really had that drive yet. So from my standpoint, these guys aren't quite up to game shape yet. So it's going to be really hard to handicap these matches. But with that in mind, let's go through it. Let's start at 125.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of funky stuff going on this year, but that's why they pay us the big bucks. These Apple podcasts and YouTube. That's why they're bringing us the money to figure this out, Eric. Let's check this out. I'm going to go through and I'll just give you the top 8 in the weight class, and we'll go from there. So let's start with 125. Number 8, Pat McKee. We saw him the other weekend. Leon Cronin, number 7 from Nebraska. Brody Teskey at UNI, transferred over from Penn State last year. He's number 6. Number 5 is Drew Hildebrandt from Central Michigan, or Brandon Courtney, Arizona State. Big flop in the rankings. Jacob Camacho was number 2, got upset last week. He falls to number 3 by Sam Latona from Virginia Tech. Wild match. Actually got the takedown at the end, and picture came down. Not worried about that. So he got the takedown at the end, and he got 2 swipes, and it came down to criteria at the team score on points. And it, basically Virginia Tech won by those back points that they got. So, good. He jumped up. He's a freshman. He's at number 2, and number 1 is Spencer Lee. This week for me, honestly, I think it's a race to number 2. I think it's Spencer next topic. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, in fact, I'll even jump ahead to heavyweight. We've talked about this. There's 2 weight classes where we already know who's going to win it, unless something freakish happens and lightning actually happens to go through the roof. And that Spencer Lee obviously is going to walk away with this hands down. The only thing you say is he actually going to walk away with the Hodge Trophy? Is he going to tech his way to the top, or is he going to fit a few pins in there? So the only names I'm going to mention, and then we'll move on to 33, is I want to throw out Drew Hildebrand, and I mentioned because he's a senior. I'd really like to see this kid All-American. I don't want him to become the Reggie Miller of wrestling, because obviously he's got a sister who's probably more well-known in the wrestling circles than he is, and that's not a knock on him, and that's Sarah, who's obviously a world team member. So, I'd like to see Drew make a run here, get All-American status, really good wrestling family there. And Latona, the kid from Virginia Tech, he got the big win because he was the one I was going to mention as the dark horse. You always get a freshman that comes out of nowhere, and he's not necessarily someone coming out of nowhere. He's a big-time recruit, but I think you're going to see this kid make some noise in the weight class. But again, this is a case where this is a Spencer Lee show.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on. 133. We'll go this top 8. Coming in at number 8, former RU guy, Brandon Patesol from Lehigh. Started out at RU, then transferred. 7, you got Corbin Myers, Virginia Tech. 6, our man, Sammy the Bull Alvarez from Rutgers. Number 5, Mickey Philippi from Pitt. Sammy had a big win over him last year. 4 is the Maniac, Austin DeSanto from Iowa. Going up to number 3, you got RBY, Roman Bravo Young from Penn State. 2 is Stefan Micic from Michigan. And number 1 is Dayton Fix from Oklahoma State.
Yes. So
thoughts on that weight there?
I think we got to start at the bottom with my man, the Roadrunner at Lehigh. Obviously, XRU guy, big time guy from Jersey, coming from Phillipsburg. He actually wrestled 141, so I'm curious to see if he's going to stay there. So if he bumps up to 141, he kind of comes out of the rankings. And I was going to say from the beginning, he's a dark horse going in his 5th year. I was really looking forward to see him he got the All-American last year through the vote, not necessarily through wrestling. But if he goes to 141, that'll be a little bit tougher of a jump for him. So what I like to say in this weight class is you've got 4 or 5 guys taking the bull out of it who really can make a move here. Dayton Fix, you think, is the favorite. He hasn't wrestled because obviously we're not going to get into the whole situation with the suspension there. I don't think it's the time or place for that. That'd be for another show. If you ask me, I'm going with Roman Bravo Young here, RBY. I love RBY. This kid makes funk look fun, okay? He makes it almost look artistic. He has taken funk and put style to it, okay? Him and Sammy have had some of the best matches I've seen, okay? Had a really good barn burner at the Big Ten last year, but he's made a huge jump since last year. I've seen him wrestle a couple of times since last year, and I think this kid's got the offense to win it. Dayton Fix, to me, is he's your traditional good defensive wrestler, has a good shot. Between you and I, though, I love offense, and I think RBY has made some huge jumps. I'm taking him to take Dayton Fix out. That's my guess here, but we're going to find out in the Big Tens, okay? Is Bravo Young and Micic going to get the opportunity to wrestle in the finals? Is one of them going to bow out? And on another show, I'd like us to talk about, wrestlers who actually sit out matches if they're not hurt, okay, to protect seeding. So Micic, I think was he turning 30 this year? I think it's his 8th year on the team. So he's also one you'd like to see probably as a favorite on the top here. So I think it's between those 3 guys. Obviously, we will see Sammy get the All-American status here. I think he breaks through. He's already beat Filippi. I think he can take DeSanto myself. But again, DeSanto's always tough. Obviously, Corbin Myers is going to be a tough out here, but I think the top 8 is pretty much set in stone. There's not a lot of guys, I think, below that who are really going to come out and make a big move here. You got Ryan Sullivan, who's a true freshman, who's made some really good moves moving up. And the only other name I'm going to mention, because I love the name, and that's Jaron Van Vliet, okay? Van Vliet from Air Force. I mean, you can't come up with a better name than that. He lost to Sullivan, early in the year, but I like that kid as well. But, that's my take. I'm going to go with RBY.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a three-man race for who could run the gauntlet here. I do think Sammy could pull out a win over any of those three on a given day. I think you'll have trouble running the gauntlet and beating, running the gauntlet and winning that to win the title. I like Sammy's chances to take top four here. I think he could get into that tier. I'm going Stefan Micic. I think he's been training for the Olympics. He looked sharp at the Worlds last year. He took a fifth place finish, actually qualified for the Olympic Games. I'm going Stefan Micic here. I think he has those takedowns. We saw him take out Nick Soriano at the rack. So I'm going with that as my pick. I think this is an exciting weight class.
All right. So 41.
All right, moving on, 141. All right, I'll read these ones off to you. First off, we got number 8, Real Woods from Stanford. Number 7, electrifying Dom Demas, Oklahoma. 6, Chad Red, Nebraska. What a name, Red, Nebraska. 5th is Ian Parker from Iowa State. 4, Alan Hart from Missouri. 3, you got Nick Lee, Penn State. 2, Jaden Ironman, Iowa. And the number 1 wrestler in the land is Sebastian Rivera. What are your thoughts on this weight?
Okay, you got to go with Seabass only because we're obviously we're partial to him. Obviously, we want to see him go and get that title. This would have been his senior year, but obviously with the free year, he's going to get an opportunity to wrestle next year. So this guy was poised to win this weight class. We don't see Yanni this year, okay, and I'm assuming he would have wrestled 41 and not 49. So not having Yanni here really takes a little bit of the juice out of it, but it is what it is. The only problem is Ironman, and Jaden Ironman, this dude can bring it, man. And obviously we saw what Ironman did to Yanni a couple years ago. We know this kid's got an electric shot. He took out the Cuban from Ohio State earlier. This kid's got offense. This kid can turn you on top. Okay, that's the one guy that gives me a little bit of pause with Seabass. I think Nick Lee's a solid wrestler. He's obviously going to finish, I think, in the top 5 easily. But I don't see Lee taking out Seabass or Ironman. I'm going to go with Seabass because I have to, because I'm partial. But if I were to take my brain into account, I really like Ironman here. I think he could easily run the gauntlet. In terms of any dark horses, listen, I don't know what the deal with Real Woods is. I don't think he's wrestled. Obviously, he was going to transfer out. He pulled his name from the transfer list. So I'm curious in terms of where he's going this year. He's the kind of talent that can make a run if he wrestles. But again, I just haven't seen him. I don't know what his situation is at Stanford. Tariq Wilson and Zach Sherman kind of on the back end of that top 10. Both those guys are solid wrestlers. Those are guys that I think can very easily move and knock off a Parker or Hart and move into the All-American round. And Chad Red always brings it. He's a tough wrestler. But again, I think this is a case between Ironman and Seabass. I think either one can take it. Anyway, your thoughts?
No, I'm right with you. I mean, Ironman does give me pause. I think he's an unbelievable athlete. Only guy to have a college win over Yanni Diakomihalis. So I do think that he's a top contender. I would say Ironman, but I go back to Seabass. Seabass beat he beat Lee. He beat Seth Gross last year. So I feel like Seabass has that momentum, comes up in the big spots. Wins over those guys, I think, is what's going to propel him to get to that top of the podium. So I'm going with Seabass.
All right.
Only other guy I would bring up, two other guys. I think Tariq Wilson, number 9, let's not forget about him. He was the dreamer a couple years ago when he finished 3rd. Third in the nation, came out of nowhere. Also another guy, going all the way down to number 24, Zach Trampay from Binghamton. This guy's a Pennsylvania State champ, had a good year last year, was coming on strong at the end. I think he could make a move up there, maybe get into that top 8 from a Pennsylvania State champ. Also second cousin to Rutgers. Trampay, who had his best tournament at Binghamton University, beat 2 ranked guys. So I think there's a little bit of a mojo there that Zach Trampay went to Binghamton. I think he might be able to pull this out and get on top of the podium.
Yeah, and I would mention to you, yeah, I like Tariq Wilson too. Has a big win off Zach Sherman already this year, so this kid can bring it. He's already got a rank win, and again, a guy that is probably going to make that push in the top 8, but can he make a deeper run once the tournament hits? So, all right, why don't we jump to 149? I think there's a good list there.
Yeah, 49, you go all the way down. There's a lot of good wrestlers there. We'll go number 8, Keenan Storr, Michigan. We saw he had a close win over MVB. Number 7, Jared Egan, Iowa State. Number 6, Mikey Carr, Illinois. 5, Max Murin, Iowa. 4, Boo Llewellyn, Okie State. 3, Brock Mueller, Missouri. 2, Austin O'Connor, North Carolina. And number 1, Sammy Sasso. Also bringing up number 9, Griffin Perriott. We know that close match, controversial. Mike Van Brill almost had a win over him. What do you think about this weight class?
Well, obviously Sasso sits on top, okay, the sophomore, but I'm a big fan of Austin O'Connor. Okay, this kid can bring it. I think if I'm going to come right out, there's 2 guys that I'd like here, and that's O'Connor and Mueller from Missouri. Both these guys have already kind of placed here. Sammy Sosa, he's going to win a title before he graduates. I'm going to go out on the limb and say this is not his year. Okay, I think Austin O'Connor takes it this year. That's who I'm going with. And I'm trying to think. I like the kid from Purdue. He's a senior. He can make a move here. But I got to throw a name out there, and it's Legend from Cali, Legend Lammer. I just love that name. He's got a big win over Jaden Abbas over at Stanford. He's another kid I like, who I think he's in the top 20. He was as a freshman last year. He redshirted, had 23 wins, had a 17 win streak. He's taken 2 losses this year. So it's hard for me to go out and say, and those 2 losses were to decent wrestlers, but nobody that you would think is top 10. So I think he's a guy to look out for in the future. But, that's my take here. I don't think Sasso is going to take it. I like Austin O'Connor.
I look at this weight. I'm going to go, who wins it. I'm with you. I think Austin O'Connor is going to win this weight. I look at this weight, though, and I see so many guys lower on this list that could jump into that top 8. We know Mike Van Brill. I do think he has a great shot at this weight. A lot of guys he can beat to come up. I think he has a great shot to run the gamut here and get on that podium. I think you're going to see a lot of chaos at this weight because I think it is very, very deep. Yaya Thomas barely lost to Sammy Sasso last year.
That's right.
He's ranked 10th. You go down here, Jared Verkleeren from Penn State. He could always make some noise. Just a lot of people that could make a move and get on that podium at this weight. Another person I'm going to bring up, and this is where what we talk about is we didn't have the body of work this year. So this is someone not even ranked. Mania from Michigan State. This guy lost 7-6 to Sammy Sasso. So he's not even in the top 25, lost 7-6. He's a freshman, I believe, a redshirt freshman. This guy took 3rd in the Greco Worlds. And we know Michigan State, I think they've been climbing back up. They had some great teams in the 90s and early 2000s. They went after these Greco guys, especially in New Jersey. I was on the 96 team going out to Fargo, and they grabbed 2 of our guys from that team. Nick Ficchetti, he won a national title out there. And Corey Posey, I know from up your way, he finished 2nd in that tournament. Beat someone in the semis that was pretty tough by the name of Cale Sanderson to make the finals. Bankel was out there. He was a coach of Michigan State. I believe he was out there. He saw that NFJ attitude, and he brought them guys over. And really, they had some stellar teams in the 90s. So I think Michigan State is going back to that Greco mentality and brain.
Yeah, and love the name Corey Posey, going back to a Westfield wrestler. Probably one of the, if you think in terms of the top 10 New Jersey wrestlers who haven't won a state title, you got to put Corey Posey up there. Never could quite break through to get number 1, but a kid who had some pretty good international success after the fact, as you mentioned. So you'll find a nice picture of Corey Posey, me the evil eye on a district championship back in '94. I think I was talking to some smack with him on the side about, I could take you, Corey. I could take you. But I wrestled both him and his brother, really his brother Chris as well, going way back to when we were rec. So Michigan State is a program that was, as you mentioned, down for a little bit. I remember one of the times Rutgers went out and wrestled them, and it was almost like an easy win for us. And you don't think of a Michigan State as being kind of an easy win, but I would agree with you. Yeah, they're building that program back up. So you're going to see them start making some moves over the next couple of years. And the last thing we need is another program in the Big Ten getting stronger.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Looks like it is.
Other names real quick. Rooks from Indiana. He's a solid wrestler. Obviously, Holla from Campbell. So there's a couple of guys, as you said, at 149 who might out of nowhere breaking that top 8.
Yeah.
So 57?
57. Yeah, let's talk about this. This is another very tough weight, deep weight. We'll go into here. Number 8, Woluwan. Number 7, Kendall Coleman from Purdue. Number 6, Brayton Lee from Minnesota. All 3 guys Kennard already faced. Number 5, we have Caleb Young from Iowa. By the way, Paxitani, Pennsylvania. 4, Jesse Del Vecchio from Ryder. 3, David Carr, Iowa State. 2, Hayden Hidley, NC State. And number 1 is Ryan Deacon.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wants to say that Cleve Young is going to make the run here. The problem is I don't know what the situation with the Iowa wrestlers are. Okay, so it's really hard for me to make a pick kind of at this point in the season. I think you go with Deacon here. This is one of the cases where I'm going to go with the favorite. I think Deacon obviously has got the pedigree. I think he's already shown what he can do kind of at this level. Hidley, obviously the kid from North Carolina State, him and Carr are solid wrestlers. I love the Jersey kid from Ryder, but I'm going to go with Deacon on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Deacon this is his year. I think he has a win over James Green last year, who's a world silver medalist. Deacon's tough. I think this is his weight. Very tough weight. Rob Kennard, I'd love to see him make a run. I think he needs to beat some really good guys, a couple very good guys to get on that podium. He should, if he gets better, he could do it. But this weight is very, very deep, and lot of studs at this weight.
Yeah, you mentioned Kennard, and you'd like to see him make a move here. As a redshirt freshman, this is a tough weight class to go ahead and break in the top 8. So it's going to be difficult from him from a Rutgers perspective. What I would like from Robbie this year is make the tournament, which I think he's going to do. But again, it's tough. I think we're going to have one more match versus Maryland. So you're wondering if he's going to have the body of work he's going to have to. What you want to see from him is maybe pull a win or 2 off, and maybe see if you go on yourself a little bit of run on the back end of the tournament here. So I'm not going to count Robbie out. He's had 2 great matches already this year. So I think he can win a few at the Nationals. I think it's gonna be very tough to All-American at this weight class for him. And the one name which we didn't mention, which is Kendall Coleman, he's a kid who could come out of nowhere and go on a run because he's got that explosive double. I think he's an athletic wrestler. Obviously, he's already in the top 8, so you kind of see him already making a run at 8A status, but he's the kind of kid who out of nowhere can come into this tournament ranked 8th and make a run to the finals if things were to fall his way. So that's the one dark horse I'll throw out there that I think can make a run here.
No, I agree. All right, so let's move on. 165, we got number 8, Ethan Smith, Ohio State. Number 7, Dan Bronigal from Illinois. Number 6 is Jake Wenzel, Pittsburgh. Number 5, Travis Whitlake, Okie State. 4, Anthony Valencia, Arizona State. 3, Shane Griffith, Stanford. 2, Alex the Bull Marinelli, Iowa. And number 1, Makai Lewis from Virginia Tech.
Yeah, my man Makai hit the scene hard a couple of years ago. We were there, Jersey flag, when out of nowhere he knocks off the 1 and 2 seeds to win the Natty title. Okay, so he's no secret anymore. But let me tell you something, Alex the Bull Marinelli, There's a tough wrestler, and there's a guy who's yet to win a national title. Obviously, always had good battles with Vincenzo Joseph over at Penn State. Okay, I'm really looking forward to this potential final, but you can't count Shane Griffith out of Sanford. Okay, this is a tough wrestler. He's the kind of wrestler at 3 who's right up there with the top 2. I think this is a case where those 3, one of those guys are going to win the title. I'm going to go with Lewis here only because I have to. I'm going to go with the Jersey guy, but the Iowa wrestler could pull this out. I think the top 3 are the ones who are going to take it. There's some good wrestlers in this weight class. It's always a deep weight class, so I'll let you kind of come up with, who you think the dark horses are. Obviously, Kennedy Mundy from North Carolina. He's a wrestler that obviously the pedigree in that family. Obviously, his brother, who was a solid wrestler, had some good matches against JVB. His pop is obviously an Olympic champion, so it's in the bloodline. But Kennedy is a solid wrestler, okay? It's his last year. I like to see him break through. I'm a big fan of his style of wrestling. So he's the dark horse I'm going to put out there, that a kid who can come up and make a big run. I assume he's going to come back next year and wrestle again, but Monday's the one I'll throw out there.
Yeah, I'm with you on Monday. He had that big upset over the number 2 seed 3 years ago, I believe. Did not All-American. But I think he's the guy that could really make a run here. Really, even if he's wrestling at his best, he could win it. But he's been up and down. He beat the top guy and then dropped some. So really, I'm with you on the top 3. I really think it's Mackay and the Bull. Alex Marinelli. I think it's his senior year or his his senior year, get to come back next year, but could he get there and get that national title? I do think, like you said, we were there last year. Mackay Lewis won his title, ran right to me afterwards, jumped in his parents' arms, literally a foot in front of me. I made the ESPN because of that, and I saw that passion he had. So I'm going Lewis taking this weight again. So let's jump over to 174. 74, we got number 8, Andrew McNally from Kent State. Number 7, Carter Staruki, Penn State. Number 6, big upset the other week. Indiana win over Carter Staruki. Donnell Washington. Number 5, Demetrius Romero, Utah Valley. 4, Caleb Romero, Ohio State. 3, Mikey Labriola, Nebraska. 2, Logan Massa, Michigan, and 1, Michael Kemmerer.
Yeah. So I'm going to take Massa over Kemmerer in this one. I like Logan to win it this year. I'm going to throw kind of a couple of names out here that kind of are lower in the rankings. And I'll go with, you were mentioning Michigan State. And I like Drew Hughes here. Okay. I think he can make a run. I'm not necessarily to win this thing, but he's the kind of wrestler in the back end who could sneak into an All-American if things fall right. So I'm going to go with Drew Hughes as a dark horse out of Michigan State to kind of jump in that top 8.
Very tough on top.
Yes, absolutely. And let me tell you something. When you get into this national tournament and it's a grind, if you got a kid who can ride top, who can ride jab, who can turn you, those are the kind of wrestlers who are going to sneak through kind of in the back end and win a couple of matches. I like the NC State as well. I'm just trying to think in terms of guys kind of on the back end of Kid Bullard. So those are 2 wrestlers I want to point out that I think can make a run here. But again, I'm going to go with Logan on this one from Michigan. That's not to say Kemmerer can't win it, but this is a weight class that, to me, I wouldn't be surprised if someone comes out of nowhere. The kid from Indiana, okay, Washington, this guy's the real deal, okay? I'm really excited to see him over the next 4 years. You mentioned him. I was going to mention him, but since you did, I didn't lead with Washington. But I think Washington's going to, as a freshman, is going to get the All-American status here. But again, I'm curious to see if you're going to have someone come out of nowhere and make a run here. But I'm going to go with Drew Hughes, that he's a guy who's not ranked in that top 8, who I think can go ahead and make an All-American run.
Yeah, I look at this weight and I do see, I think Kemmerer and Massa are a step above the rest. I think Kemmerer wins it. I think this is his year. He had that win over Mark Hall last year. I think he takes it. I don't feel very good about that pick because I think Massa is very good as well. Really, I look down here. I see a lot of good guys, but I really like Jackson Turley's chances. I don't think there's a lot of guys that he cannot beat from what he's shown, with his coming out party. Really, I see him as someone that could really make a run and get on that podium. I think just the makeup of the weight. I think there's really three guys. I think Labriola, Massa, Kemmerer, maybe even throw Caleb Romero in that mix. But I do think after that, there's a lot of good wrestlers. I wouldn't put anyone else into the great wrestler category. Yeah. So I definitely see Jackson Turley as somebody that can come in and make some noise, maybe upset a 6 or 7 seed somewhere and make a big run.
You know, and that's a great point in terms of the way the weight class is. You're right. And if you look at the top, I'm looking at, you know, most of these names I know, these are all solid wrestlers. But if you ask me a year ago, do you see a lot of All-Americans in this group? And even when you look at the top 10, I would say, no, not really. So obviously the top 2, those are 2 guys who could probably, you know, All-American in about 3 or 4 weight classes. And you're right. Once you get down to the middle of the pack, anybody can sneak in here. So you and I were talking about, you know, if Turley had the opportunity to wrestle against Nebraska, which obviously we didn't get to see, I was really excited to see how he would stand up against Labriola. I thought that would be a huge match to know where Turley's at. And that's why I said earlier, it's really hard this year to really make any great predictions because you're not seeing anybody wrestle each other, okay?
You're right.
I agree with you, Turley. This is a year where the weight class is thin enough. He's got such power to just throw anybody. He could go on a little run and make a move here. So I agree with you. I think I like Turley.
Yeah,
a little bit of noise.
Definitely. Yep. All right, let's jump over 184, right? I'll go top 10 here because we do got number 10, John Poznansky. He moved up in the rankings without even doing anything. I think some guys, he beat one. Number 9 is Owen Webster. We know that was a close loss to John Paz. Number 8 is Lane McCuskey, Michigan State. 7, Dakota Greer. Okie State. 6, Parker Keckinson, UNI. He just had that big win over Dakota Greer. 5, Aaron Brooks, Penn State. 4, Luda Perez, Binghamton. 3, Trent Hidley, NC State. 2, Hunter Bolin, Virginia Tech. And 1, Miles Amin.
Well, there's the kicker right there. Is Miles Amin going to stay at 184 because there's rumblings that he's going to bump up to 197. So you might be taking, and you got to feel bad for Rutgers at 197 because the weight class just got tougher. So it's hard for me to make a pick here, John, because I really want to see where Amin goes if he does bump up to 197. So I like Hidley here, the North Carolina State. Maybe I'm just caught by the name. But at this point, I like him over Bolin. Aaron Brooks is the one that I think could really make a run here. He was a big recruit for Penn State. And what's funny here, let's take a step back, John. When you think of the dominance of Penn State over the last 8+ years, okay, we haven't mentioned a lot of Penn State names. And even when I mentioned RBY, he's not even the favorite in the weight class, okay? We could potentially see the heck with Penn State, you know, not winning it. They could theoretically fall out of the trophy round. They may not have a national champion this year. So when you think of the Penn State dynasty, it's really going to take a hit this year. But I think Aaron Brooks is the real deal. I think he's kind of, I won't call him a dark horse because obviously he's a top 8 guy, but he's the kind of guy who can go on a run, get all the way to the finals. But it's hard for me because I want to see what Miles Amin does, if he's going to stay at 184 or not. Webster obviously had the win over Poznansky. I think Paz has an outside shot to All-American here, but again, I got to see him wrestle some more. We obviously know Paz is going to make, you know, multiple runs through his career. A true freshman, very hard to get AA as a true freshman at this weight class. So I like Aaron Brooks to make a run here. I think he's the one dark horse I think that could potentially get into the finals.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, I'd go Miles Amin number 1, Aaron Brooks, you know, number 2 here. They might end up in the same side of the bracket, though, and meet in the semis. You know, a lot of good guys. Hunter and Hidley are both tough. But I see them as the top 2. We'll see what happens with the seeding if they end up on opposite ends. But that's, you know, that's my view. I think I'm with you. I think John Poznansky has a good shot. Very difficult, even though you see him at number 10 and you say, oh, he's at 10. He just needs to go up two places to get on that podium. It is much harder than you think because there's a lot of good guys that you got to beat to get there. And I think he's going to face a lot of good guys at nationals, and every match is going to be a test. But I'm excited to see how he does. He's been wrestling great, and I would love to see him get on the podium, maybe become Rutgers' first 5-time All-American. That would be excellent.
It would. So going up to 197, we had a big upset here.
Yeah, so 97, we got a new number one. So we'll go back here. Number 8, Jay Aiello from Virginia. Number 7, we have Noah Adams, West Virginia. What previous number one had a 45 match win streak, I think, going into last year. He got upset by number 6, Stephen Buchanan at Wyoming. Not in his house, he said. Got the takedown at the end. Took out the number 1, Noah Adams. Number 5, you got Nino Bonacorsi from Pitt. Number 4, you got Isaac Tremble, NC State. 3, you got Cordell Northfleet, Arizona State. 2, you got Jacob Warner, Iowa. And number 1, you have Eric Schultz of Nebraska.
So names that are not in the top 8, but are both freshmen and both strong wrestlers who can make a run. One of them, you got to meet quite well, and that's AJ Ferrari at Oklahoma State. Another character, so to speak. Okay, and I feel 5 years because he's been so active on social media and just a guy who's really put himself out there, obviously going into a little Twitter battle with Gabe. So, you could see Ferrari make a run here. Still a true freshman at 197 is really tough to go ahead and break that top 8, but he's been on a little bit of a roll. And obviously Michael Beard from Penn State, another Penn State wrestler that I think could theoretically make a run, but 2 young wrestlers who you're going to hear from over the next 4 to 5 years. So I just want to throw those names out. And again, this is a situation, is Amin bump up to 197, because I already called this at the beginning of the year. I had this for Eric Schultz from Jump, okay? And that was before the big upset happened, the kid from Nebraska. I think this is his weight class right now. But if Amin comes in and kind of bumps up to 197, which is some of the rumblings, that could change that perspective a little bit. So I think this is a case where I'm just excited to see how Ferrari and Beard wrestle.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like you said, I got 6 sitting next to Ferrari at the final X. He is a character, if you will. His name is AJ Ferrari. What a name. I do think Noah Adams is going to be right back in that hunt. I know he dropped down to number 7, took a loss to Stephen Buchanan. Adams, Buchanan, and Ferrari, they're all in the Big 12. The Big 12 is pretty tough at this weight. I see AJ, going in there and maybe ending up on the side of Noah Adams. I think Noah Adams gets it done in the Big 12. I think he ends up winning the Big 12, probably number 2 or number 3 seed at Nationals. I do see AJ Ferrari, though, finishing 3rd. I think he's going to end up, maybe he'll get like that 9th seed, come in the quarters. I think he does beat Eric Schultz. I think you're going to see a big upset there. I think he has that mentality. He's cocky enough. I think he beats him. I think he wins in the semis. I think it's fate. I think he wins the finals. I think he's going to be and he runs the table the next 4 years. If the name is AJ Ferrari, so I just don't think that you can have that name. There's something going on there in the universe to have that name and to look like he does and to act like he does and to wrestle like he does. I think this guy is your first 5-time national champion.
That's a bold statement, my friend. That's a bold statement. But you know what? He's got the name, he's got the pizzazz, but he better live up to it.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see him go. I think it's going to be a good show at 97. I do think this weight is very wide open, though.
Yeah,
you get on paper.
Yeah, jokes aside, you mentioned a really good point, and that's seeding and why you can make all the picks you want, depending how you get seated and where you kind of fill into the bracket. Certain guys match up well against other guys. And that's why we should probably do this again once the actual brackets get placed in, because I can tell you right now, you and I love to go through those every year and see how things shake out. You see where guys fall in the rankings. And if you know there's a guy that, you're going to get in the quarters that you didn't expect, that could change everything. So that's a really good point you bring up. A lot depends on how you get seeded in this national tournament. Because if you end up, taking a tough loss in your conference tournament and you don't get the seed you want, that's why guys bow out at their conference tournaments to protect their seeds. You get the wrong seed, you can go from basically having an opportunity to make it a run to not placing altogether. So, it's a solid point there before we go to heavyweight. I think that's important to know that how you get seeded could really affect how you finish.
Exactly. So going into heavyweight, talked about it earlier, Ethan Liard jumped way up in the rankings to number 9 with his win over now number 10, Jordan Wood. I think he was 4 or 5. Number 8, Luke Lufman, Illinois. 7, Zach Elam, Missouri. 6, Carter Inslee, UNI. 5, Gannon Gremmel, Iowa State. 4, Matt Stencil, Michigan, Central Michigan. 3, Big Snacks, Tony Cassiope, Iowa. 2, Mason Paris of Michigan. And number 1, Gable Stevenson from Minnesota.
So yeah, this is Gable's show. This is basically like 125. Let's not even debate this. The question is, does he get the Hodge or does Spencer Lee get the Hodge? Okay. So if the only reason you don't have Gable win this thing is if he gets hurt between now and March. So this is Gable's to win. It's really, as you said, a race to number 2. Okay, before we go there, we forgot to mention Rutgers at 197. So your thoughts in terms of Janzer, not to go back to, what's your thoughts? What's his opportunity to All-American there? Because I think it's a tough slog for him. I don't think he's quite ready for 197. In fact, at this point, you just want to see him break in and get into the national tournament. He obviously has the skill set to do it. I'm curious what you think about Rutgers at 197.
I think he has a shot. I think, it's a little tough. The weight's a little big for him. Like I said at the last, I think the way the weight class is, I look up and down that weight class. I don't see a lot of killers. I don't see, I don't see guys that I'm like, well, this guy's a Miles Martin or this guy's, I don't see guys that are killers. I mean, he could go anywhere from getting 8th to not qualifying. I think he does have, I do like his chances here. I think, you get into that tournament and win a bunch of 1-point matches and get on the podium. That's the path for Billy Janzer. He's not going to hit a big throw. He's going to win these 1-point conservative matches. So I do think he has a shot, but maybe he needs another year to grow into that weight. I'm excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of growing to the weight and also, as you said, his style of wrestling. Okay, I'll be repetitive. Obviously, the underhooks, getting inside trips and so forth. Okay, it's going to be very tough for him, given his height and that weight, to go ahead and maul guys. He's really got to learn how to get a leg attack. I want to see that at 197, but you're absolutely right. He can go ahead and win a bunch of matches 4-3, 5-2, and just sneak in there and make a little bit of run. He's obviously got the mentality. This kid doesn't back down from anybody. Okay, he took the tough loss, obviously, to cost us the win versus Ohio State. But again, I don't think that has anything to do with mentality. That's just getting used to the weight. So if he can get used to it here and he can pull off an upset or two, absolutely, I could see Janzer making it. So anyway, jumping back to heavyweight, one name we didn't mention the top 8, and that's a freshman, Colton Schultz from Arizona State. That's a top recruit, somebody we were looking at Rutgers. That's the kind of freshman. It's really hard to see a freshman outside of Gable to go ahead and make a run at heavyweight. But that's the one kid I think you can make as a dark horse who can sneak up there and make a little bit of run here. But as you said, this is basically Gable's to win. I like Mason Paris to get to the finals. I think that's what you're going to see. I think you're going to see Paris and Stevenson in the finals. I took some crap because I made the comment that Mason wasn't really in Gable's wheelhouse, and it's basically, they're in different universes. I got a little pushback on that. Obviously, Mason Paris is a tough wrestler, but obviously he's not going to win the title this year.
So one thing I'm going to say on that is I do agree. I think this year Gable's going to run away with it. I think he's going to win. I think he wins the finals pretty handily. I think this is the biggest lock for a final. I don't see Cassiope beating Paris. I think Paris makes the final. I do think within the next, and I'm going to you might call this a bold prediction. I think within the next 2 or 3 years, I do think Mason gets Gable. I think he catches him. I think his trajectory is a little bit higher. You look at Gable. Gable was the man in high school. Mason was very good, wasn't quite the man. I think Mason made that jump. He just had a win over Gwiz. So he's more of that world caliber level now. So I think you're going to see in the next couple of years, I do expect Mason Paris to catch Gable. He's just not there yet. I think Gable, this is Gable's show to win. And yeah, I think you can pencil this in as a final.
Yep. So does Iowa win the team tournament?
I think so. I don't think this is even going to be close. I think Iowa's going to. They just got too many bullets in the barrel, right?
Yep. Does Penn State get a trophy?
I think they do. I think Penn State's Penn State. I think you can make the argument on paper that they do not win. They do not get a trophy. But I think the matches aren't wrestled on paper. I think Penn State does what Penn State does. They're going to get a good amount of All-Americans. They're going to put a couple in the finals. They're going to get the falls at some point. I see them getting a trophy.
I'll tell you what, though, we talked about them having wrestlers in the finals. Other than me, I don't think we picked a Penn State wrestler to win the natty title this year. Like I said, I like RBY, but aside from that, John, we might see a year where Penn State has no national champions.
Yeah, I think we might. I think Aaron Brooks. I picked him to take second. I wasn't feeling very good about that. I do think that he has a very good shot to win this. But we'll see. Yeah, we could see a year where Penn State gets shut out in the final. Long time since that happened, right?
All right.
That'd be 10 years, right? 10 years, I think.
Yep.
Yep. I'm going to look that up to see what it is. All right. So other match, big matchup coming 223. We got Kyle Dake. Dake is taking on same night North and Vincenzo Joseph. What are your thoughts on that match?
Well, what I'm confused about is Dake taking them both on at the same time, because, if that's the case, I think they might have a shot to take him. Listen, Dake is all world class. Okay. I like Jason Nolf a lot. I think Jason Nolf, once he gets healthy, you didn't see the real Jason Nolf a year or two ago when he was a little banged up. I'm really excited. He had a big win over Oliver earlier this year on the Fight Work. So Jason Nolf, I think, has a bright future as an international wrestler. He's just not at Kyle Dake's level right now. Kyle Dake, I mean, his only competition right now is JB. I'll make the bold prediction, say JB is going to Tokyo. Okay. Dake hasn't beat him yet. I don't see him beating him now, but obviously he could. So I think Dake wins both these pretty easily. I think Nolf's going to give him a tough run. I think he's going to give him a tough first 3 minutes, and I think Dake will eventually, his defense is going to run away with it. Listen, I like Vincenzo, but he just took a really tough loss to, in his last match he had. So I don't see him making much noise in this match. My only question is this going to be a tag team? You're going to see, our boy from Penn State, David Taylor, come out of nowhere with the metal chair and hit Vincenzo in the back of the head if it's going to be a tag team. But aside from that, I think Kyle Dake goes 2-0.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is their only shot, is if they're taking him on at the same time. I think he beats Vincenzo fairly easily. I think North makes it the distance. I think I'll say that. Might make it a little close for a little bit, but I think Dake's gonna win this one by 7 points. So I'm Dake all day in that match, but should be fun. Taking on them both in the same night. I do think they're wrestling separately, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it was Dave McFadden, I think, that teched Vincenzo. I think it was a week or two ago.
Yeah,
he's now wrestling at the UPenn RTC. So that kid, another Jersey guy, he's catching fire, man. This was a guy who was down the dumps after his last appearance in the Nationals. He's really picked himself back up, and he's looking really strong right now. So obviously, I'm just throwing that name David McFadden out there since we're talking about Vincenzo Joseph, but that's a guy you want to watch out for in the international scene because he's looking tough.
Yep, he can make a run. All right, let's go to some MMA. Big UFC card this weekend. A little heartbreaking. Frankie Edgar got knocked out by Sandhagen. They call him the Sandman. I think this guy looked very good. It looks like he's going to get the next shot at the title versus Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling. I think that's going to be a good fight. Those two, I think, are a little bit worried after seeing his last 2 knockouts. Really feel for Edgar. Edgar's one of my favorites. I looked up to him when I'm older, but I still looked up to him when I was getting in MMA. Tried to, do my style similar to him with the pressure and just being relentless. So Edgar's somebody that's going to go down, future Hall of Famer, great career. Frankie's loved by everybody. Always, when you look at who he fought, he always fought somebody ranked number 3, ranked number 2, title fight. Not many people done that. Even the top guys, you'll see them take on a top component, then take somebody that's ranked maybe number 11. So big props to Frankie getting in there, still doing it. I don't know. What were your thoughts on the fights, Eric?
Well, I think this is Edgar, almost his 3rd knockout here, getting knocked out. I think he's had a couple in a row. So he had a nice statement on Twitter, basically saying, he's doing well. He's going to come back. He's going to be strong. You haven't heard the last of me or something to that effect. My question is that does Edgar call quits soon? Does he wrap it up? And I'm not one to tell anyone when to end their career. Okay. I think there's a lot of people who tell people you need to bow out. You don't understand what it's like to walk away from your career in anything, let alone in athletics. And I think it's different with athletics than it is necessarily day-to-day jobs. It's really hard to watch somebody walk away, but you think of a Muhammad Ali, and I'm not trying to put Edgar in the Muhammad Ali category, but you say to yourself, you wished Ali had walked away 2 or 3 years before he did. Okay. And I'm not saying that one's correlated to the other, but my standpoint is Frankie's got some young kids. I've seen Edgar at some of the kind of youth tournaments because obviously his son's coming up. You like to see him start to, put his time into that. But again, it's not my place to tell Frankie to walk away. But there's a part of me that says, John, you've had a wonderful career. You've probably done more than people expected you to do when you first came into MMA. He wasn't that big flashy name that anyone was going to say was going to be kind of a world champion in this sport. He kind of turned a lot of heads, but you ask yourself, is it time to hang it up? So I throw that back up to you. What are your thoughts for Edgar in the future here?
Yeah, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I know you said coming up. I mean, I remember that BJ Penn fight and the word on the street from everybody saying, why is BJ Penn fighting Frankie Edgar? This makes no sense. BJ Penn, people don't understand because this is another guy that kind of stuck around too long and took a lot of losses. But at that time, BJ Penn had one of the most dominant 3 years of anybody. No one was touching him. They thought, why is this even a match? This doesn't even make sense. This is a joke. Frankie was a 5-1 underdog. Beat him, then comes back and beats him a second time. So, big props for the heart of Frankie, and, definitely was a top fighter for all those years. I agree with you. I would like to see Frankie maybe get into these wrestling cards, right? Maybe do something like that. But it's hard. I'm in the same boat. I can't tell anybody to hang it up, but he had an amazing career. He did so much to this sport. He got knocked out 3 out of his last 4 fights. We'll see what his decision is. I think, I'd like to see him get into some of these big wrestling matches, jiu-jitsu cards. I think he'd be a big name in that. That might be good for him, not taking the blows to the head. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with him.
Yep.
All right. And then, the heavyweights, Alexander Volkov versus Overeem. I knew one of these guys was going down. Volkov knocks out the Reem. I think he's looking good to get in that title picture. Stipe Miocic goes against Francis Ngannou. We'll see who wins that fight. He could get the winner there. I think Volkov is big, long, causes a lot of problems for these guys. And we'll see. We'll see if he ends up taking on Stipe or Ngannou.
Yep. So to pivot before we close out, do we even want to go to Mr. Funkmaster on what he's doing with his little boxing match coming up, or do we even want to touch that?
What's that?
I said, do we want to even get into the
big Ben Askren, huh? Ben Askren taking on Jake Paul. It is what it is. I see that as, we're just saying, you get out of this career, go into another career. He said, what Ben Askren says is, well, I get to compete and you're going to pay me a lot of money for it. So good for him, I say, right?
Yep. So I think Askren would wrestle a gorilla if he got paid for it and he got a forum to do it. So Listen, Ben's always about, promoting the sport, as he says. But what's my only fear here, John, and I'll close out with this, is people forget how dominant Ben Askren was, okay, at Missouri. When he got into MMA, okay, obviously was in Bellator and didn't quite get to UFC until the very end of his career, okay. If you look at Ben Askren when he was in top shape, he always jokes about having the dad bod, okay, of being Mr. Funk, who's not really kind of a strength guy. You see the Flow special when he got into Missouri and he couldn't even lift 135, okay. This is a guy who's a lot stronger than people gave him credit for. A badass grip, okay? He latches onto you. You do not get away. And my fear is when you think of Ben Askren, years ago, I just hope he doesn't take his reputation by doing some of the stuff he's doing right now, because this guy was a killer back in the day. But again, he's his own man. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I love the work he does at Flow. I think he's
he has to win this fight, man.
He runs his club out in Wisconsin, so.
Yeah,
Yep.
he has to win this fight. I mean, I think if he loses to Jake Paul, that's going to be bad. The UFC, he took that bad loss against George Masvidal, but Masvidal's a killer, man. Anyone could get hit with that flying knee. Really unfortunate that he got to the UFC at the time he did. He would have been right in that mix for a title shot. If he got in, 4 or 5 years ago, he was dominating everybody. I think he had some, has some skills that just pose problems for people. So I'm just hoping he wins. I mean, I think if he wins, it is what it is. If he loses, it's going to be tough because Jake Paul, he's not a good boxer, but he's not the worst boxer on the planet. You know what I mean? And anytime he can throw punches, something can happen, he can get knocked out. I'm hoping Ben could win. I'm a big fan. Let's go, Ben. Get it done. I hear that music going. We're out of here. See you guys next time. Follow us on YouTube.